Welcome everyone to Shadow Talk Unfiltered with me, Lisa. Today Miss Juliet is off gallivanting around Australia like she does. So it's just me today, and today I'm very excited to introduce to you our wonderful guest, Dr. Mara Payne, and that's the only time I'm going to use the word doctor. But, you know, credit due where credit is due. And I'm very, very excited to have Mara join us today and introduce you all to this amazing woman who works in the cryptozoology field, works in the science fields, and has this amazing crossover. So hi, Mara. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're so welcome. We were talking in the pre-show just about how long it's taken to get this together and how we met. I actually got the privilege of listening to Mara talk on Project Zoo Book with Amy Boo, and I was blown away by your technology and your understanding and your career. And I was like, right, Mara is definitely on my list of people to talk to, and I know this is going to happen one day, really, really, really soon. So today is the day. So Mara, you have had just the most extensive career in science. Would you give us a bit of a rundown? You've been in it for what, 30 plus years. How did you start in the sciences? Was this always something you kind of wanted to get into when you were younger? What does that look like as far as how did you get into it?
Well, I got into it. My dad really encouraged me to be interested in his work as a watchmaker and a clockmaker. And so I was interested in science from a young age, just like to understand how things worked. And I was very keen to try to go to the moon and be an astronaut.
Cool.
And there's my beeper, so I'm going to try to
That's okay.
pause myself here, except it's not doing it. There we go. I will be right back.
That's okay. Off you go. That's what happens when you start baking during an interview. I'm not quite sure where Mara's off to, but I imagine she's baking bread or she's got a cake in the oven because that's what I would do as well. In fact, I do have a cake in the oven right now. So we'll just wait for Mara to come on back. I always wanted to be an astronaut as well, so I understand that. And she's back.
So my thing is slipping down. Back. There we go. So I really liked science and I really liked astronomy. I was lucky enough to have astronomy and physics in high school. And so I took a little bit of a detour in my education. I also, one of the really big influences on me were the Sherlock Holmes stories and Nancy Drew stories and things like that, but what drove me to it was the attention to detail and to get out of your mind and to observe in a neutral way. And so that really fascinated me, and I tried to practice it as a kid. And so through some events, personal events, I decided to major in psychology for my undergraduate degree. And by the time I got done with psychology, although it's very useful, I discovered that I did not have the temperament for clinical work. Sure. So I took a break from school after I graduated and kind of did some soul searching, a little bit of walkabout, and decided that I was going to go back to school and study astronomy, which is what I was just really had a call, just I really had a draw to it. And so I was able to get the math and physics under my belt, and I went to school, got my master's, but because I had to make up some classes, that took me 4 years. And then when I got done with that, I did went to a graduate school to get a PhD. So I've sampled a lot of different areas of astronomy, but I've always been kind of an empirical, what we call an empirical scientist, or a scientist that is interested in doing experiments and looking at those results. Or in the case of astronomy, you have to remotely observe, because you can't touch and poke at a star, even the moon, for the most part. So that's how I got the education that I needed. And when I graduated with my PhD, because of some family considerations, I needed to move into a remote sensing field, but not astronomy. And so I started studying artificial satellites, man-made satellites that are orbiting the Earth, that we, again, can't poke and prod, per se, to understand what's happening. In the cases where we don't own those satellites, or in cases where the satellites break up and they're just debris objects and they're out there tumbling, and how to understand and try to predict what they're going to do, where they're going to move to, and things like that. So there's a lot of forces on those satellites in orbit besides gravity that make that problem not straightforward. And so you can think about it this way: if you throw a baseball, you pretty much know where it's going to go. It's going to go where it's going to go, but then gravity is going to take it down. So eventually it will fall down. If you throw a feather, the feather is going to initially take off, but because it's light and it's being, it has such resistance to air, it's going to kind of wobble around and float around. It'll eventually come down, but certainly not as fast as the baseball. So that's the kind of thing that happens out in space, but not due to air, but due to other forces that are resident in natural forces that are resident in that domain. Yeah. So I just used my physics and astronomy background, understanding all of that stuff, to eventually, with a small other cadre of other scientists, kind of develop this area of science called satellite characterization. And so we are trying to understand what objects are, what they can do, and beside it, from just points of light. And so the kind of science that I'm trying to bring to Project Zoobook and things like that, and other kind of paranormal phenomena, is that discipline of objective observations, and also trying to tease out from just a point of light on an image, just a blurry dot. Is it a giraffe, or is it, a human being, right? And so I have techniques for that I've applied for man-made satellites that I think will apply to other kinds of observations that we have, either the photographs maybe, but also I'm used to working in all of the range of electromagnetic spectrum. So X-rays, visible light, infrared light, radio light. You don't think of radio as light, but it's a form of electromagnetic radiation. So, so all of those different wavelengths interact with matter in a different way. And that can tell you things about the matter it's interacting with. And then the other piece of the work that I've been doing is, I'm not really a sound engineer or an audio engineer, but I have been working in radar. And so I am familiar with the different types of the frequency analysis that one does with sound. And so to apply some of those techniques to understanding what kind of information we can glean from sound to tell us about the creature or the phenomenon. So,
so are you saying that that sort of technology or that sort of kind of science could be used on other types of, like, or in other industries, other kind of phenomena? So not just
yes,
a Sasquatch, for example, it could be used for alien entities or UFOs or paranormal entities. How far can you go down that track?
yeah. You can go pretty far because it's really based on how phenomena occur and interact with their environment and what kind of external indicators there are of those interactions. So, for instance, our eyes can see things, but we can't see all forms of light. And the way we see light is from reflections. And so we have to have a source of the actual light, like the sun, say. And then what we see is the reflection of the light off of the material.
Yes.
And one way we can discriminate between objects is how the materials interact with the light. So, for instance, if you know how when you're driving when the sun is just after it's risen or just before it sets, a lot of times you get these glints off of cars. So when you see that glint is a certain kind of reflection, and that glint has the color of the sun. Mm. So even a blue car will have a yellow glint, and a red car will have that same yellow glint. Oh. But yet we know that there's a blue and a red car. So how does that happen? Mm. Well, that happens because the sunlight, that's a different type of reflection where the sunlight is hits the car paint, and the paint is such that it absorbs all the light except for the light it reflects. So for a blue car, it absorbs all the sunlight except for the blue, and so it reflects the blue, and so that's what comes into our eye. Now, the eyes, though, are sensors that have a limited range that they can actually see light. Yeah. So at night, for instance, if there's no light around, we're pretty much blind because we can't see in the infrared where things would start to, where things actually at room temperature, they emit light because they have a temperature. And again, that whole emission of light is another set of physics and the physics there is governed by a couple of different physical laws that say if it's a certain temperature, then it's going to be emitting at this wavelength or frequency of light. Yeah. And so if phenomena like a non-corporeal entity is in a room and has a way to interact with its environment, then depending on what that interaction is involving, we should be able to either devise a detector or use detectors that we already have that measure things outside of our human sensor suite, touch, hearing, sound, sight, and that sort of thing, to be able to record or collect information on those kinds of entities.
So that's phenomenal, because that means that, I mean, I understand what you're saying about your eyes, because your eyes only absorb something like 24 rates per minute or per second or whatever it is.
There's a frequency limitation, and there's also a wavelength.
Sure. Yeah, so in comparison to your iPhone, if you put your phone on slow motion, it's still getting more information than what our eyes do. And so a lot of the time, if you're in the cryptozoology field or you're in the paranormal investigation field and you see something with your eyes, you really truly want to believe what you've seen with your eyes. But basically, we're now saying, well, they're probably not the best senses, all things considered, when that frequency is not as potent or not as, I guess, high tech. we need an upgrade. So are you telling me that carrots don't help us seeing in the dark?
Not at all.
This is what I got from this conversation.
No, good for you.
Damn it. It's only because I have a 4-year-old and I'm trying to talk him into eating carrots, and I said to him, you have to eat it for the beta carotene because then you can see in the dark. Absolute bullshit. We know this.
It's see in the dark, but it does, the vitamins do help your eyesight.
So that's amazing. So basically what you're saying is the technology that you're working on in the field that you're working on would allow us to potentially find a dot in the middle of somewhere and take information from the image or the something, that entity that's in there, or that phenomenon that's in there, take that information and then draw conclusions from said information.
Wow. Yeah, and if you have a resolved image, you're even better off. The challenge with things like regular photography or even digital photography is that it, even like the eye, it does have a limited range and a limited ability to sample at a certain frequency or hertz. So depending on what you're observing, your camera or your instrument may or may not be optimized to detect the phenomena that you're actually wanting to detect.
Sure.
So it is important to try to glean some understanding, or at least try to box in what you know about the phenomena that you're trying to explore, and try to devise better and better as you learn more instrumentation to gather data on it, and try to understand through the philosophy is, if I understand how something interacts with an environment, then I can understand something about the thing itself.
Yeah.
Now,
that's so interesting. So what are your thoughts on, let's go to Bigfoot for a second. I know Stacey's just joined us. Hey girl, how you doing? That's so interesting. So what are your thoughts on, let's go to Bigfoot for a second. I know Stacey's just joined us. Hey girl, how you doing? You missed the best part, girl. I'm so sorry that we couldn't get
Dang
you.
it!
I'm not quite sure what was going on.
I'm sorry. I lost connection. I'm really sorry. And so I was like on a walk. I'm like, I'm going to listen to this. So I'm sorry I missed that, but I'm really excited to hear what she's going to say about Bigfoot. Thank you for being here, Mara.
You're welcome.
Such a
Thank you for the
pleasure.
invitation.
Cool, thanks, Stace. If you've got any questions, Stacey, feel free to just jump in, or you can, if you're walking, you can drop it in the chat if you want. Or far as, let's just kind of really focus in on Bigfoot Sasquatch. As far as, is Bigfoot a biological creature? Does Bigfoot have interdimensional? Oh, she's answered the question.
The hard question first. Oh my gosh.
100%. Is he an alien species using interdimensional portals? I don't know. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I'm going to answer as an empirical scientist and say we don't have enough data to know.
No, that is not the answer that we need.
No, that's not a very satisfactory answer.
No, 100%.
So,
what's your personal view on it? Well, actually, why don't you give us two views? Why don't you give us a imperial scientific view on it, but not that we don't have enough data to tell us whether or not we can confirm it or not. And then your personal view from, and I imagine it's always really tricky coming from an environment where you're potentially pulled by the data and pulled by your career path. So
yeah,
why don't you give us?
We started out the conversation talking about objectively sampling or observing the phenomena, and that bias is the bane of a good scientist's existence, and it can really throw you off of the truth, because really what we are seeking is the truth.
Sure.
And so Bigfoot, I can say for certain, is an uncooperative target.
What does that mean?
That means that it doesn't really want you to be studying it or interacting with it, or it's shy. But until it's not, I guess, and then if you've upset it can interact with you more. Sure. But it's not where you could sit down and interview it, or even sit down on the grass and study its fur and take pictures up close and do take samples and stuff like that. So you have to forage and find the data that you want. So when you're designing an experiment in the lab, you have all of the things, from previous research, all the parameters that we think are involved. And so you set about to control all of those parameters. It's a little bit like taking care of a toddler. So the things that it can get into. And so in order to control their environment, you have to do certain things.
Sure.
Now, in observational science, like on people, or when you can't put something in a lab and poke and prod it and control all of those in variables, like in astronomy, then you have to do other things that make your results or your conclusions less certain.
Yes.
So, and then that body of knowledge is built up over time, over many, many scientists, and then you can be more certain of. So it goes from hypothesis, I'm guessing it's something based on what I already know, to once I have convinced myself and all the other researchers, or the majority of other researchers, then it becomes a theory. like Newton and gravity, and then it became the theory of gravity, and then and then Einstein's theory of gravity came along, and then we observed that phenomena that he predicted from that theory. We observed that in real life, and we're like, oh, okay, now we call it a law. It's the way we're, so that we have a law of gravity. It's not the theory of gravity anymore, it's the law of gravity.
Sure.
Now, does that mean that we want to stop tweaking our understanding of how that law of gravity works? No, but we are more certain about the concept of gravity being a thing. So, in a similar way, I think it's one of the reasons, I got interested in Project Blue Book or Zoo Book is because they're trying to gather all of the data taken from multiple observers, and what you can do when you do that, you can't remove the bias of an observer, a particular observer, but what you can do over many observers is kind of statistically measure what those biases are, so that you and understand what they are, so that ideally mathematically you'd be able to remove them, but in our case probably not. But we can understand that instead of a single number, it might be a range of numbers, for instance, like the height of Bigfoot is 7 feet. Well, no, it's 9. No, it's 6. No, it's 12. And so you just take all those numbers and you average them together, and then you statistically know that you can create a number called the standard deviation that shows you how much that number varies from across, hundreds or thousands of observers, for instance. So I slyly didn't answer your question. So I'll return back to it.
It's tricky. I know it's very, very complex, and it's very there's so many moving parts to it.
So I like to use Occam's razor, which is the simplest explanation. Explanation tends to be the correct one. It tends, not always. And it seems like there's so much data that does not involve reported paranormal activity, that that Bigfoot may be a naturally occurring creature on Earth. But from some other studies about ancient wisdom and things like that, it could be that these creatures can connect to other dimensions that we have either lost the ability or never had the ability as humans to connect to. So does that mean they're aliens though? I don't know. The problem that I have with that, well, there's a couple of things, but my major one is the vast distances involved without using technology that can warp space and time. I do believe that I'm not ruling out that that technology doesn't exist somewhere. But I do think in terms of natural phenomena, there are a lot of things that we can't explain.
Sure.
And so, and we currently I don't think have the kind of sensors and instrumentation to measure those kinds of things, like that would help us get insights into those. So I'm skeptical, but I have an open mind about that.
Fabulous answer. I love that. Thank you so much. I love the fact that you're teaching us in our vision. Thank you. I said to Mara when we first started, Stacey, please just speak to me like I'm a 2-year-old, because like seriously, I appreciate that so much. Stacey's got a quick little question. Do you want to jump on here, Stace?
Can you guys see me and hear me?
For sure, we can hear you.
Okay, so Dave Politis' research in Central California. He did some stuff with the Hoopa Project where he was surveying many Native Americans in the area and getting their sightings and cataloging them. Obviously, that's not, people's accounts are not going to be recognized by the scientific community, but he was with Dr. Melba Ketchum on her paper in which they analyzed several samples of hair in which there were tissue follicles attached, and they ran DNA, and it came back female. The mitochondrial DNA was human, and there was an unknown paternal DNA. So that threw the Bigfoot community for a loop, and a lot of people have argued back and forth whether or not it was a legit study. I'm curious on your opinion on that, whether or not it was maybe not well done, or if you didn't know about it, and what your thoughts are on that. And then the other part was I think there's a lot of people that don't like the idea of the Sasquatch being part human, and maybe because it takes away the metaphysical plasticity of the idea that they could be interdimensional. But I mean, look at our abilities, the remote viewing. What if we are by nature interdimensional? We just, like you said, we've forgotten how to do it, or maybe we don't have the capacity, but I believe that we do because I believe in life after death. So what are your thoughts on that? Sorry, I'm out of breath.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the study that you talked about, but I would love it if somebody could send me a link or something to that so I can actually look at it and see. I do want to dissuade you from the notion that just because people are reporting observations that they're not scientific. Observations like that have been the backbone of psychology, the backbone of anthropology. Jane Goodall has spent decades observing gorilla and ape populations, and her scientific method is outstanding. So don't I think those are very valuable. But just like the story of the South American Colombian Indians, or the Incas, or the Mayans, whoever it was, who first observed the ships of Columbus coming to the New World, they hadn't seen a ship before, and so the story goes that they couldn't see the ship. It took a shaman to actually go out and see the ship, because he had the flexibility of mind to be able to see a shape that he'd never seen before. So again, that just goes to human observations can be biased. And the other tricky bit about it is, sorry to go off on this, but I think it's important. People see colors differently. People also, people's hearing varies by a whole lot. Especially young children, a lot of times can hear much higher frequencies, not as high as dogs, but when we get older, we lose our frequency range. And so all of those things need to be factored in. I don't know how they took the data and whether their sample could have been contaminated in some way. It seems hard to me to contaminate one part of the DNA and not the other. I don't know. But like I said, I haven't read that, and so I'd like to understand that better before I really came down one way or the other. I completely believe that it might be part human, though. I think that's certainly an option on the table. I don't see anything that eliminates that possibility. And that's another way of dealing with a phenomena that you don't have complete laboratory control over, is to have a list of it can't be's, right? So, if I have a ball, then it can't be a brick because it's not the right shape. Although it might be red. So, so there's things that you can eliminate right away, like Bigfoots aren't fish, because so far as I know, we haven't found them swimming around in deep water. So, the process of elimination can get us pretty far when we're trying to understand the phenomenology. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yes. That was a lot of food for thought too, to not discount. I mean, so you get a lot of critique from the hard sciences, which is kind of what I've been brainwashed into, that people's accounts are anecdotal or hearsay, and I'm kind of a firm believer. Another question I wanted to get your take on is, I live pretty locally to the Olympic National Forest, and there's a lot of local accounts. I'm friends with a gal whose dad was on the cleanup of Mount St. Helens, and he found a femur bone that was quite large. And if you're familiar with the Ape Canyon event, they've been known to be in the area. There's a migration route very close to here, from what people say. But he turned this bone into the Department of Natural Resources or Fish and Wildlife. He turned it in, and then he heard nothing of it. And there's a lot of people that say that when they're turned over to federal institutions or the Smithsonian or anybody who's supposed to take it and relay the information to us, or to, add it to the catalog of discoveries, that they are being brushed aside or hidden or even destroyed. I even heard a story that they were dumping bones in the middle of the ocean because they didn't want people to know. Do you think that there is information, physical evidence out there that has been destroyed to keep us from knowing more about them?
I really could not comment on that. I do not know. I've worked in the U.S. federal government, and worked with government employees for close to 35 years now. And I can say that many times bureaucracy gets in the way. And if you get a good person who is diligent and, will do what they're supposed to do, but there are some people who won't, and will just put it in a drawer and never do anything with it. What ends up happening is when there's some kind of audit or, a kind of a clean out of all old records and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff will get taken and get destroyed just to save space. Is there an intentional, policy or practice to get rid of data or evidence of things that we can't explain? I do not know. I've never run across that in my personal experience, but I also wouldn't really, work in those kind of areas. And I've never seen that in my career on what I've worked on.
Mm-mm-mm. And good question, Stacey, because, I've had my own personal experience with my dad working in Department of Conservation in New Zealand and finding giant bones, huge, like kind of 13-foot long, giant bones. And they were picked up by one of the universities and just gone. And he was told he's not allowed to talk about it. And that was a good,
Wow.
mine now, like 30 odd years ago, 40 odd years ago. And so, yeah, I think those things happen.
As a scientist, that hurts me.
Yeah.
Data is precious.
Yeah.
And
And why
to get
would
rid
we
of
be
it
trying
or
to-
to hide it, that's atrocious.
100%. Why would we be trying to hide this sort of stuff? But you then look at things like the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger in Australia. There are millions upon millions of dollars going into that cloning effort when there are thousands upon thousands of sightings coming through every year. If one of those sightings is correct, that means that there is still a population of the Tasmanian tiger running around. Why would we want to clone and create an ecological nightmare for these animals? But there's so much money in it, right? And maybe that's part of what's going on as far as like the dark side, I guess, of the Bigfoot industry. That's a great question. Thank you, Stacey. My question to you, Mara, is the likelihood. What's the likelihood? How do you get your technology into the Bigfoot industry? How does that work? How could that work?
Well,
if you were to give, could we get our hands on something to use it?
I don't have like a widget.
Just put the app on your phone.
This magic wand will do it all. So,
I mean, that's a giant question, I know, and it's probably like there's 5 different parts of it that you're doing and bringing it together. But how is there a way in the future maybe that we could potentially go, this is how you could use it in the field?
Well, let's take it one step at a time here. Let's use the human eye for an example. Now, used to be people had to lug heavy camera equipment around with them, and now we have it in the back of our pocket. That's a camera that honestly was a lot more sophisticated than the one people were dragging around. So the other nice thing about these kind of cameras in our phones is that they're digital. And so a lot of times, people would have to mess with film, and then they wouldn't be able to see what they took in the moment. And so film camera technology and data gathering is very problematic in that way. There's no immediate feedback on, is my picture blurry, or, do I have the right lighting, blah, blah, blah. But so if we took that a step further, what would be ideal is if we could broaden the sensitivity range of the visual instrument that we're using to collect data with. So we went from the eye to the iPhone camera, and then if we had something that we could collect infrared data in, most of these sightings are at night, or when the sun is close to setting or just rising, and so the lighting conditions are very problematic. So if we had something where we could collect some infrared data, that would be great. What would be lovely, which does not exist, it'd be a handheld long wave infrared camera. Now there are some thermal cameras that do pick up people's body heat, like human body heat and stuff. So you could use something like that, and they are getting smaller and smaller. They are expensive, but they are getting smaller and smaller. And then you build on that to say, well, a camera field of view and its resolution and everything is limited from the little optics that are in front of the detector in these cameras. So if I could put the whole camera on a telescope where I'm blowing up the image and I can magnify things that are farther away and make them appear closer and more resolved in my camera, then that would be ideal. And another step forward. So the issue is that unless you can set things up that you know won't be bothered and are in areas where you can improve your likelihood of detecting something and set up an automated system that will trigger the camera to go on. But that's done in anthropology a lot of the time, zoology and things. So, so all of that technology exists. I'm not making anything up here that we need to invent. And then, just sit back and collect the data and try to let the technology do the hard work for us. But that all takes investment in money. That really takes a financial investment, and it takes an investment in what is now called data engineering, which is then taking the data and trying to organize it in ways that can be digitally searched very quickly and compiled and collated, and then correlations can be run on the data so that like every 5th Tuesday at sunset at this one location, this camera triggers on this one thing and I see it come by, or something like that. So patterns of behavior then can be established for these creatures that are currently, like you said, just serendipitous, observations and things like that. So, so I feel like, if, and that's one of the projects that I think, one of the sources of data that Project Zoo Book is looking at, which is to try to map out frequencies of detections, observations of the phenomena, and then by using that kind of a map, maybe try to pick out areas where this kind of investment would be fruitful.
Yeah. It's like what you're saying, Stacey, like the migration patterns, Every biological creature has a migration pattern, and those are, if you look at Scott's Bigfoot mapping project, he's starting to be able to pull out migration patterns and pathways and channels and things like that, that his data is actually starting to show very, very clearly. And one of our other members, Terrestrial Sasquatch, she actually is doing an AI version of pulling data from eyewitness accounts and then being able to show statistically where these occurrences are happening, kind of like the lunar cycles. Are they happening more around kind of nocturnal, all of that sort of stuff? So she's kind of putting another layer on top of the Bigfoot mapping project, which is really exciting. And yeah, I think that could have some really good amazing benefits of searching for these cryptids, and not just Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Like there's so many other types of creatures that are just now being, reestablished or refound or whatever. And they thought they were all just legend from, indigenous cultures talking about them hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And then all of a sudden, oh, they are real. We just haven't found them because we haven't been looking in the right area. So those patterns of behaviors, I think, definitely are beneficial. So, I'm just kind of like, how do I get that into a phone so I can then take that out to the bush?
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about it these days, though, is that, these things are, the size, you can put it in a backpack. Can't put it in your
Yeah.
pocket, but you can put it in a backpack.
Yeah.
So that was one example. The other example is what we hear. So, or the other easy, low-hanging fruit here is improving our sound uh, evidence. So, a lot of times we'll hear something, or we'll hear a wood knock or whatever, and if we could get some recording devices that have a broader range of frequencies that they can detect, then we may hear other things than, that accompany the wood knock or whatever. So it's kind of, it's almost like, the blind man and the elephant, or blind men and the elephant. If all I'm looking at is one piece of it, then, the elephant's a snake to me if I have its tail. So the more evidence the more phenomenologies where we can get some evidence. And again, the beautiful thing about, recordings of wood knocks, just even with a regular recorder, is that then you can analyze the different frequencies, and you can see, am I seeing something consistent? Is there intentional variability in the wood knocks? And that would lead to one to say, oh, maybe it's a form of communication, versus, trying to scare somebody away, right? They may have learned that if I wood knock, then people scatter and don't come by. So you never know what kind of behavior is learned versus is an innate form of communication, say, for instance.
We've heard that numerous times. I've heard that numerous times in the research that I've done with people that have spent a lot of time in the wilderness and have had multiple encounters, that sort of stuff. They now see this as potential communication, versus, kind of predatory or trying to scare people away.
Yeah.
That's
interesting. And so there may be subtle things that we can't hear, but they can hear. So if we can get some sound equipment that can measure more frequencies, a larger range of frequencies, then we might be able to gather more evidence, and that could lead us to some understanding.
I think that's something that is definitely not being looked at enough, is the broad range of frequencies, because we only hear very, very small amount. I mean, like, you just look at dogs who are, incredibly high levels of frequency. So I definitely think that's something that we should be probably looking into further as researchers and developers in this space. I love talking to women because we have such a different perspective. We're very thoughtful in our processes and kind of our systems that we put in place. We're kind of like, okay, well, how will that affect that, and then how does this connect here? And then we have that kind of mentality, whereas guys are just like, right, let's go find it, or let's go in, or they just have a totally different perspective. And you definitely need that 100%. But I feel like we also really need this kind of way that women use their brains to kind of analytically put it all together and connect all the dots. That's very, very interesting. Stacey, have you got any questions for Mara before we wrap it up? Have you got anything else?
Have to go listen to the beginning of the video because I'm not going to make anybody repeat anything, but I'm just appreciative of you being here, because we need more people with credibility talking about this subject and with the knowledge, especially science-based knowledge, and directing us in the way and how we can be citizen scientists and do it right.
Absolutely.
That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on, and that was one of the reasons when I first heard Mara talk on Project Zoo Book, and she was talking about infrasound and infrared and satellites and all of the fun stuff in her astronomy sort of career path, and I was just like, oh, this girl knows what she's talking about, and I really have no idea right now, so I don't understand what she's talking. I do now, thank God. So I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to go through this. I have another question for you, Mara. It's a lot of our women, majority of our members are well educated, very kind of influential in the fields that they work in, outside of cryptozoology and that sort of stuff as well. And they struggle with the balance in male-dominated arenas, and just like in cryptozoology, ufology, paranormal investigation to a point as well, archaeology, we struggle as women to kind of really stamp our feet and show our work and be recognized for that. My question to you is: has there ever been a time that you've kind of I guess struggled to find your space, or has there been a time that you've been dismissed only later to be proven right, or is there a time that you can think of that you've gone, yeah, ha, thank you, I am right? Well, how did you deal with that? I'm sure that you're in such a male dominated, space science arena. You've got Elon Musk to bloody compete with. He's the most egotistical person I think I've ever heard of in my life.
I don't build rockets, so I don't really have to deal with them.
Well, we just, lump space. Lump space.
Yeah,
everyone's in
for
space.
sure. I have been shut down many times during my career. And some of it is subtle and some of it is pretty overt. And I went home and cried many times. So, you grow a thick skin out of necessity, but you can only overcome if you center on yourself, and reclaim or claim your power. And so, and I don't mean be selfish or be arrogant. That's not what I mean. I mean that, first off, it's still true, and I don't know when it will be different, that we as women have to be extraordinarily careful. As Ginger Rogers says, we have to do everything that Fred Astaire does except backwards and in heels. And so when you're working, you want to be diligent. Many times, because of pressures, real and unreal, you will be pushed or encouraged to rush to judgment and rush to do your work. And I have been in that place. And that is when you make a mistake. Not just you, anybody will make a mistake in that scenario. And it's not to say that you should take your sweet time and blow through your deadlines. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to be honest with your own work about what you can conclude in those times that you've been rushed. And so to be authentic and to be honest as both a person and a scientist, or as a manager, or a healthcare worker, or whatever you are, is the most critical piece. Because in the end, it's only you in that bed in the middle of the night. And if you don't live your truest self and be with integrity, then nothing else really matters. And so, learning to stand up for yourself in a professional setting is a skill that is hard won.
Yeah.
And that's where doing your due diligence and making sure that you're accurate on your facts is really important, because then you can go at the situation instead of reacting or emoting. You can act from a place of integrity and certainty, or uncertainty sometimes, but honesty. And so try to hear behind the words what might actually be the issue or an issue with what you're doing, and work on that. And I've been in these situations both in a private setting and, unbeknownst to the other person, a public setting. And if you can maintain your dignity and self-respect when somebody is being unprofessional with you, you will earn a reputation that you will be respected for. And so it's one of the hardest things to learn or to deal with. And it never goes away. Even after 35 years of publishing in a field, it still happens to me. So
it's just disgusting, isn't it? And it pushes so many women out of the industry that they want to be in, or out of the space that they're so passionate for and so invested in. I'm a personal trainer. I've been in the fitness field for 27 years, and I see it all the time. The girls that just get pushed out because of the male domination and the male influence, or that sort of stuff.
And and unfortunately, you can run, but you can't hide. It will happen in almost any place where you're trying to make a career.
Trying to make a mark.
It doesn't really matter.
100%. And I guess that's one of the reasons that perfectly phrased little block there is exactly the reason why we wanted to set up Cryptid Women's Society in the first place, and why the likes of Stacey has joined, and Brittany, and these other amazing women who are already in the field on their own doing stuff. Because we see this as such a need in this space. We need amazing, credible, respected women like yourself, Mara, but we also need so many other women to come and join this movement so that we can create that balance, so that women have a space to come to, talk honestly, not be ridiculed, and have that kind of boundary around them, and that kind of force field protection around them, saying, well, yeah, but I'm part of that, and I know A, B, C, and D, and I've got these networks and these contacts of these women who are really, really strong, confident women in themselves. And then, we can draw off that. So yeah, I totally agree, and I totally understand that. And I appreciate that you've been in that space for 30 odd years, man. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, and so the only other thing I can say is to try to pay it forward and try to make it easier, better for the next person coming along.
For sure. Actually, that was going to be my last question. In your career, have there been any people that have, opened doors for you that you say in yourself, that person was so incredibly influential, or that person has opened a door that otherwise I possibly would have changed my career path, or that could have had a major, and then how do you pay that forward?
Yeah, many, 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 many people. And most of them, not all of them, but most of them were men. But again, I'm in a male-dominated field, so
yeah.
I've only had one woman boss my entire career. So
that's probably a good thing.
I had women customers, but not a supervisor.
Oh, there's so many amazing guys that are in the cryptozoology field and the ufology field and paranormal investigation that are so supportive of what we're doing together, and just supportive of us as individuals as well, researchers, and hold us in the highest regard, which is really, really lovely. And I think you need that. You have to have that support from specific people that resonate with your soul and your alignment, especially when you're dealing with things like Bigfoot that may or may not be an interdimensional extraterrestrial biological ape man. Who knows? I don't know. Girls, you have been phenomenal. Thank you so, so much, Mara. Thank you for joining us. It's such a pleasure. This is a very, very quick talk. There are so many other things that we could have gone into. I know that you have some thoughts around ancient kind of ideas and wisdom and stuff as well, and that kind of showed through there. And that might be something that we would love to go into in the future, but I imagine we'll be definitely bringing you back on to have another conversation, and hopefully we'll get some more of our members on to join the live. Thank you so much, Stacey, for joining us. Absolutely beautiful to see your blue sky out there. And Mara, if you just want to hang around afterwards, we'll stop the recording and we'll just talk about kind of how we use this. This episode will be shown in the secret door, so you can pop in there as a truth seeker and watch this in a few days once it gets edited by the most amazing Ashrakat over in Cairo. And we will have Mara back on very, very soon. So thanks everyone for joining us. You've been amazing. And if you've got any questions for Mara, please just send it in the DMs or send it into Messenger or pop it into the gathering. Love you all. See you later, everyone.